Morning. I'm back with another update on QDoc. Last year, I walked you through the features we shipped in Qt 6.8 and 6.9, which included documentation in headers, QML enum generation from C++, the native type command, and future deprecations. And today, I'll show you a bit of what we've done to build on that foundation with Qt 6.10 and the upcoming 6.11 release. So I'll cover three main areas: the new documentation commands, new configuration options, and the return of internal documentation generation. I'll also touch on our LLVM and Clang support and give a shout out to KDE for adopting QDoc. So let's start with the new commands. In 6.10, we introduced QML enum and no translate. With 6.11, we shipped QML singleton type. We've enhanced the overload command, so it now takes a primary argument, and we have a complete table of contents system with talk and talk entry. I'd like to highlight QML enum because it completes the work that I showed you last year with QML enumerators from. Command lets you generate QML enum documentation from C++ definitions. Now, QML enum handles QML native enumerations with full linking support by type and enumerator name. For 6.11, QML singleton type provides explicit singleton marking when needed. However, you should also know that QDoc now recognizes pragma singleton and the QML singleton macros. So this is mainly for edge cases. Also in 6.10, we have the no translate command. It's straightforward. What it does is it marks text as non-translatable. So when you need API names, module names, product names, Apple, to stay intact in machine translations without adding code styling, this is what you need to use. On the configuration side, we've added 13 new variables across both releases. They cover source code linking, image handling, warning logs, and fine-grained control over what gets documented. I'd like to call out include private from 6.11, which allows documenting C++ private members, so functions, types, and variables. Combined with the restored show internal functionality, this means we can now generate complete internal documentation again. The background for this is that when we moved to the Clang-based parser back in 2016, we excluded private headers as a performance optimization. I mean, public documentation doesn't need private implementation details, so why parse them? But of course, that broke internal documentation generation for 9 years. So if you wanted docs for depointer implementations, internal helper classes, anything that was marked /internal, you couldn't get it. We fixed this properly. QDoc now has a conditional inclusion policy for private headers. So when you're generating internal docs, the parser will include them. When you're not, it skips them. The performance optimization is thus preserved for normal builds. And then we have the include private family of config options that give you granular control. You can include just private functions or just private types or just the private variables or a combination of those, whatever it is you need documented. We believe this matters for Qt maintainers, for new contributors figuring out the internals of Qt, and for other projects such as KDE that may have some of the same types of documentation needs. And it isn't theoretical. We're already using this ourselves. So if you go to the doc snapshots page, you'll find internal documentation builds. They're currently unlisted, so you'll need to visit the URL that's on the slide. But they're there, and they're being generated with these features. That internal documentation work ties directly into another feature set, which is automatic source code linking. The URL sources variables that we introduced with QDoc in 6.10 lets QDoc generate links from API documentation directly to the corresponding source code on code.qt.io. Combined with restored internal documentation, this means developers can navigate from the private API doc straight to the implementation. And we expect that to be a bit of a productivity booster for anyone that's working on Qt itself. A quick technical note, we've bumped the minimum Clang version from 17.00 to 17.06, which I believe is the last LLVM 17 release. We've also added support for LLVM 20 and 21, and we've improved the build experience. The build system now iterates through the supported versions, and it provides platform-specific error messages. And we think that these changes will make it easier to get started with QDoc, which we know has been a bit of a pain point for people in the past. And then finally, circling back to KDE, last year I told you that they were moving away from Doxygen and moving to QDoc. They have now completed their migration since a couple of months back. I think it was in September. They started publishing their public API documentation built with QDoc. And the documentation in headers feature that they contributed last year shipped as a technical preview in 6.9, and it's stable now in 6.10. And that covers the main updates for 6.10 and 6.11. From our side, we've addressed long-standing issues with internal documentation. We've improved the build experience. We've closed gaps in QML API documentation. And now we're working on improvements specifically for Qt bridges, because that project has different tooling requirements than other parts of Qt. So the work continues. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out in the chat. I think the rest of the team are also there, so you can get answers from either me or Topi or David, depending on which one of us feels like jumping in on questions. Thank you.